call the June 27th regular meeting of the Inlet Beach Protection Board to order. I think everybody met Tim, our new member. Welcome. Agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve. Tim, you're going to have to second her.
Okay, all in favor? That carried unanimously. Okay, approval of the minutes of the May 23rd meeting.
I didn't have any issues with it.
I didn't either.
Okay, all right. Then I make a motion that we approve the minutes from last month.
Okay.
Can you second since he wasn't here, and then do all?
Yeah.
Okay. We all approve, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to go on to the long-term plan, so we can get you out of here quicker.
Oh, no worries.
Well, we went on last time, and I felt bad about it.
Oh, it was needed, though. It was really good discussion, as reflected by the track changes in the document. So, yeah. Fran and I went back and did our homework. We're hoping that you guys did your homework to help fill out the list of projects and estimated time frames and things like that. So, we have the revised document in front of us. We're in the home stretch. Yay! So 4 months. That's not too bad. That's really good. So, Chair, did you just want to go section by section to see if there's questions?
I do, but I wanted to talk to you, and I'm not exactly sure where it would fall, but we had talked about adding triggers or success metrics to the plan. And then we talked about maybe we didn't want to do specific numbers, but then we also talked about what do we use a vegetation line, that kind of thing. And I wanted to revisit that issue because right now it seems like it's not something that we would be facing in the near future because we're staring down the barrel of a huge renourishment project. But if you think it back in your mind, if Lawrence and Michael had not come, we knew that at some point we were going to have to renourish. I mean, I look at our Central Reach project as like the sacrificial zincs on your boat. That, we know that our background erosion is eventually going to eat that away.
Right.
And it'll have to be redone. And that's where we had talked about Central Reach too. So, do we have any triggers that if those storms had not happened, that would say it's time to act? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
So you're saying above and beyond just normal maintenance? Or?
Okay, well, what would you term maintenance?
Maintenance to me is what's already established as far as...
But just to clarify that the project, the Central Reach project was bid and contracted before Matthew hit.
Right.
So
what was the trigger there? That was what my question was. We needed sand. That was the trigger.
Yeah, it was more of a you know it when you see it kind of thing. It was basically it was the town got the permit we had the permit in their back pocket since 2012. Then we had this we just kind of followed the seasons. There were some Irene was 2011, but Irene didn't hit incredibly hard. Then knock on wood, there were a few good years where nothing really came to the waves and things were not that bad. And then the nourishment projects on the east end were hanging in there. And then a lot of it was funding, where the town had to get go through the whole funding process with the LGC and everything. So there are many elements, but no, there weren't. I know a lot of times when we do the annual monitoring report and say, here's the shoreline, here's the beach widths. We don't have any official triggers.
You'd always say, well, I think we can kick the can down the road another year. I mean, we looked at Central Reach for years.
Yes.
Before we pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, we knew that at some point when we constructed Central Reach, that it was going to have to at some point be redone. Because that's just the way it's built,
Yes.
is to take the hit and save us, but recognizing that part of it is going to wash away. And we will continue to have that erosion. So what, do we want to put a trigger in there that says when we reach, you had mentioned our vegetation line.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, and just
Yeah, we
even
have-
beach width.
Dune vegetation, so maybe
Yeah.
beach width instead of.
Well, and then there's some more volumetric ones as well, where we can say, and that's almost when we cut like a slice of pie, along and say, okay, the dune is this much area, the beach is this much area, and we kind of look up and down up and down the beach and say, which ones don't have enough sand to withstand a 10-year storm or something like that. So there's several metrics or triggers that we look at, but we don't have like a hard and fast.
You don't have something that says if it's X.
Well, yeah, and because the Corps does that, where they say, we need 2/3 of the sand has to be lost before we're going to, come back and do something like that. And they'll do the official calculations, and if it comes in, just above or just below, it makes a big difference. For us, a lot of times we're like, okay, it's not as hard and fast, but we can.
Well, I know that in theory when we redo what we lost with Florence and Michael with that project, CRR project.
Yeah. Yes.
I kind of think that's going to move us back out to where we're going to recoup what we've lost, right?
Yes.
But prior to those storms, we were looking at a 10 to 15 year window.
Yes.
And
Based on background erosion, historical
Exactly.
erosion.
And I know a lot of that's predicated on what happens on the east end, and but I just wondered if we wanted to put some kind of a comment in there, just a paragraph, or
Okay.
I think we all hope that we never have another Florence Michael mess, but yeah. I mean, if that were to happen after we do this project, then in how many years we might need to be looking again at some kind of town-funded remediation.
So I would suggest that we add the paragraph under the new text at chapter, or on page 2-1, where we start the discussion on the focus areas, and that's where we first talked about the triggers.
Okay. So then, Kathy, do you want to just lead us through chapter by chapter, or would you like us to go to where we've had questions, or?
I was going to do chapter by chapter, and then anybody. Tim, did you get a chance to read it?
I read it.
Okay.
It was a lot of information to digest.
Did you think, what in the world did I get myself into?
Right.
Yes. If we were all engineers.
Well, I tried to put it more in not even planner speak. I tried to, we tried to bridge the technical with just general. Okay, so executive summary. We added in components about the economic perspective and the recreational perspective. Heard the comments last month. Are there any further suggestions for the executive summary?
I was good with that. I thought it was good.
I didn't have anything on that.
Okay. All right, so chapter 1, the biggest edits that were made were we did update table 1-2. Fran was able to ascertain project cost and cost per cubic yard in
Thank you,
response
Fran.
to you, Chair Myers. So we have that information.
That required work.
Yes. I had a question for you about on page 2.
Yes.
We talked about mechanisms are in place to monitor physical and financial conditions, what were the mechanisms that were monitoring on the financial? Is that the annual beach monitoring report, or?
That is referring to the annual budget process by the town.
Hey, tell me, you said page 2, but what's it actually?
It's on the back of introduction 1.0.
I don't have that. This one?
Oh,
So it's actually page 1-2 at the bottom right.
Yeah, it just says 2. My copy does.
I think that's up here,
I think
Right
it's
here.
right at the top of there.
right? Mechanisms are in place to monitor physical.
Yeah. What page do you
That's
have?
on 2 of the executive summary.
I've got it on 2 of the, it's on the back page of introduction, right?
No, that's page 2 of the executive summary.
Okay, my bad.
That's what, because Fran and I were looking like, we know we wrote that, but where is it?
I must have flipped the page.
Okay. Page 2 of the executive summary.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
covered.
For clarification, after financial conditions, do you want me to put parentheses, the town's annual budget process, or?
Well, I was just curious what it was.
So,
And on table 1-1, you've got total cost and average cost. Is that the town's total cost or the total of the whole project?
that was,
that was the town. Yeah, because this was from the North Carolina dump
yeah,
Okay.
but that would be total cost then.
for all renourishment.
So it's not just the town's portion?
No.
Okay.
And that's because I think, a lot of those nourishments, the historic ones were actually all Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
The town really didn't get into nourishments basically until some of the upland truck hauls with that following the early 2000s.
Okay.
There were some, some small nourishments and things in the 70s and that sort of thing, but nothing over, 20 or 30,000 cubic yards, it looks like.
Okay.
Would you like a footnote to that table?
Maybe so, just so that we all know, looking back,
There's
that
probably
this
some
is
stuff
not
during
our
Hazel too, even
Okay.
in the
Total
50s.
cost of
But
all
total
this
cost of
project.
the project, not including materials.
Fran, you did an excellent job on this table.
Thanks. Actually, I think I had actually some better. I used a lot of the NC BIMP data, but then I had actually better data than they did, where it looked like they were. So I definitely, it wasn't too bad.
No doubt the cost of sand is going up, huh?
The cost of everything.
Yeah, and it is. I guess I didn't do the, they weren't inflation adjusted, but yeah, it's still a good thing to look at.
Well, I wanted it in there just so that we know going forward, what's a good price?
Yeah,
What's too good to pass up?
Yes.
$3.47 is too good to pass up.
Yes.
But if it's $23 and something,
Yes,
like, that's
I
harder.
don't know.
Anything further on the table, or we can talk about the figures, make sure that the figures are okay. We have 3 now for chapter 1.
Well, I had a question on page 1-7.
Yes.
On the desired outcome of the plan, it's at the very top. To achieve resiliency of Holden Bay's oceanfront and inlets by protecting infrastructure in low-lying areas. Did we discuss enhancing our dunes to protect property? Because it's really not just infrastructure, it's also property, which in turn protects the town.
And we do have that added in a different section, so I'll carry it over to here too.
And in that
You
same
wouldn't
paragraph-
consider homes property infrastructure? I mean, is that
No,
just
when
town
I
infrastructure?
say here infrastructure, I'm
You
thinking
think
roads,
roads
utilities.
and water and
Yeah.
electric.
Do you guys agree? And in that same paragraph, for example, sea level rise will likely increase storm surge that when combined with large swells create run-up conditions that impact the dune system and contribute to further
The
beach
beach
erosion and washovers. Fran, were you here after Floyd? That would have been
No.
yeah.
99.
Tragic.
That was a bad year. That was a
It was
bad
really bad.
storm.
And just watching what that did to the beach, that's like never again. We never want to see that again.
Never.
And it was not that big of a storm.
That was really
I
bad.
remember the mayor at a meeting sometime in the spring was talking about what we really should be worrying about with the big storm is what's going to happen when water and we come from the back. He said he's more worried about the washover that may come when water goes back out
Mm-hmm.
in the area where there's big dunes, which
Mhm.
is about a third to half of the island where there's deep dunes. But so it's the initial washover and then the going back out and hitting us from the back end. To
Oh,
all of
yeah.
our marshes and our canals,
Yeah,
our canals.
it's beginning to get more and more and more problematic.
The number of times you see the docks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with Floyd, I've got pictures where it's like the water heaters from the third row that were on the ground were actually in the fourth row's front yards. It was just really, we don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, because even the Topsail Island communities, I mean, they did the same thing where all the dunes just washed out into the streets, and then they had to sieve them all with debris, and then try to put the sand back, and yeah.
No, it was a real mess, and that's why with the storms we had in Florence and Michael, that dune from Central Reach that you built, you could watch it doing what it was exactly supposed to do, and
Yes.
those waves crashed there instead of crashing on the dune, and for that I'm so thankful. And
Yeah, I agree.
kudos to the town and to you guys. And, I don't think we had many washovers then, so. Okay. And then I had one other question on that page, and this was in a couple of spots. I think I know what the answer is. It says it's a 9-mile barrier island that includes 8 miles of oceanfront shoreline. The extra half mile on each end, I guess, is the inlet.
Yeah. It's an approximation.
Okay.
And I take this also from the BIM, the state, so that we were consistent
Yeah.
with them. So
Do they have the same thing?
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we're kind of counting that extra half mile on each end as.
Yeah, the kind of the inlet hazard area kind of thing that has kind of an ocean influence, and
Okay.
but it's not quite oceanfront.
Okay.
Oh,
It
yes.
still contributes to the link.
And I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, yes, it's
Okay, I'm good. You want to move on to the figures?
Yes.
Thank you so much for adding all the little terms that we discussed last time.
That was all Fran. And
Thanks,
That was
Fran.
really nice.
sure.
And we changed the focus from study to focus areas
Yeah.
throughout. So
I'm
that's
sure Jean appreciates
yes.
Yes.
So based on the fact that figure 1-2 and 1-3, both of them are new, did you have any further suggestions before we go final on the figures?
I did not. I was good with them. And I think this board is familiar enough with the parts that we added. We know what everybody's talking about when you say those, but I think
Right.
the broader community, it's going to be beneficial.
We may have to fill Tim in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, now he's got this. So
Yeah, exactly. So
So
we
we
can-
say the bin widener,
Yeah.
you go, oh, it's on the map.
Yeah.
May I say something?
Mhm.
Somewhere in here, we talked about this, when you have like a figure 1-1, somewhere is it described in terms of addresses on Ocean Boulevard,
Yes.
where these cuts are made?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So on chapter 2, each focus area is discussed, and we put the geographic
Addresses in
the
there.
addresses. Yeah. I'll put that for you. Any further suggestions on the plan goals at 1-3 and 1.3?
May I say something Only because we've been trying to make a point, and I don't know if you guys agree with it, but we, at a certain level of the lobbying and trying to describe things, we actually are talking about protecting federal infrastructure, which is the intracoastal waterway as well. And I don't know if we talk about protecting infrastructure,
Whether it covers
and we
that.
also want to make a point that one of the things this island does is it protects 8 miles of the intracoastal waterway, which is federal infrastructure. It gets us out of the we're only doing something for ourselves. It resonated with the Corps, it resonated with OMB, it resonated with David Rouser when we visited him in DC. They kind of went, there was a sort of a aha moment that you all say, it was right there, why have we never really expressed it that way? So I don't know if you want to think about, sort of adding that as another descriptor.
We didn't really address the waterway with this plan. I don't even know if this board is supposed to,
But it's the what are we protecting by keeping our island strong? We are protecting. We're keeping the intracoastal waterway.
Right. Oh, I hear you, and I know how valuable it can be to be able to point to something.
It's the what does our overall program achieve? But there's also federal infrastructure that we're protecting.
So perhaps under number 1.
Well, I wasn't sure if we wanted to put it as a plan goal or reference it back up on page 1-7, where we were already redlining it by saying by protecting infrastructure, dunes, low-lying areas, perhaps we could tie in the intercoastal there, rather than it being an actual plan goal, because I think we're kind of in a tricky area. Going beyond our geographic boundary that we've established for the plan.
Right.
But I think it's appropriate to acknowledge it. So we
You
could.
think down in 1.2 on 1-7, is that what you're talking about?
Up at the top.
Up at the top.
Top of 1-7, where we were already revising the language. saying
Okay.
that protect infrastructure, dunes, low-lying areas, and
And federal infrastructure, including the ICW?
I wouldn't call it federal infrastructure.
I think we should just call it the
I would
ICW.
just call it the ICW.
Somebody's going to question federal infrastructure.
Yeah,
I mean,
because they're going to say, what are we doing? You're a local.
It's not your business. Yeah.
Right, I don't want to get into that line of questioning or thoughts, but we are kind of in the area of influence, though, as she mentioned, for the intercoastal. So I think if we put a reference to the waterway there, at least it gets our recognition.
Okay. Does that work?
Yeah,
Sure.
just somewhere it's like without us, you're in trouble. There's an 8-mile gap. You go away.
Okay. We're back on the figures. Sherry, you didn't have any comments, and so we're good on that. Okay, plan goals. Yeah. So we added the new one as a number 2, the one that was pulled from our 2009 plan.
Right.
So we added that. We also added number 15. That was from Dean's comments last month. Are there any further edits?
And low-lying areas would include like our canal areas, right?
Where are you, Vicki?
I'm on
Number 15 on the plan goals. I was thinking low line was anything below the dunes. Was that the incorrect thought process? we need a definition?
Yeah, I think maybe a little more,
Specific?
yeah, than low-lying areas, and including say, for example, canals,
Canals, marsh.
uh,
But they do flood.
They do.
I mean.
My backyard.
okay, right.
So I understand.
they
it
do
is
flood
kind of
a lot.
vague- Yeah,
it's areas that, yes,
yeah.
right, low-lying areas, it's like adjacent, canal adjacent, marsh adjacent areas. Is that, now we're getting too wordy.
Well, I was gonna say anything below the base flood elevation. Do we
I would
want-
consider flooding is if my marsh had flooded to the extent that it's over my bulkhead and into my pool. You know,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
consider unacceptable, but Mother Nature may do that in a storm. So it's
Right, because and obviously, in the big picture, most of Holden Beach is low-lying.
That's a good point.
got a lot of marsh.
Yeah, and
Lot of town marsh.
it's yeah.
Well, we kind of
There's
addressed that in-
a big dune system right back there.
Yeah.
Besides,
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think you've talked about, and it is in here, is over on the west end, establishing the maritime forest.
Yeah.
Part of that is to actually try and raise the level of that end a little bit.
yeah,
So we're sort of covering it in that section, right? It's right from here.
Well, no, that's helping prevent and minimize flooding.
Right.
So, yes. So, are we wanting a better definition of low-lying, or just put in parens low-lying, including adjacent canals, marshes? Who's cooking?
It's really more than canal and marshes too, though. There's a lot of
I know. If I
there are
Yeah, then-
low-lying areas all around, like the west end, and on the backside of the island.
yeah. And then even what Kathy said was like about base flood elevation, FEMA. There's a lot of the islands in
Is in a
A
low-lying,
zone.
yeah.
Some of it V and a lot of it A.
Are you guys okay with deferring to Fran to look at that and come up with a definition there?
Yeah.
I am.
We can
Okay.
maybe it is just just say something like approximately 80% of the island is in FEMA V and A zones. And we'll look at that. But based on the newest maps, which are all digital, we should be able to come up with a pretty fast number on that.
Okay. That is a Fran.
So we're going to leave it to Fran to kind of.
Yeah, I'm okay if Fran defined it as best
Sure.
you can.
Yeah. That's. I think that's a good. I think the V and A zone. It's a good quantifier,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people, because of their insurance and everything, they all know.
Yeah.
Have some familiarity with V and A zones.
Oh, I think we all know exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, we all know exactly what they are.
Okay. Anything else for the goals?
Nope.
Okay. So then chapter 2, we added in the triggers, and we have already discussed creating a new paragraph to elaborate on that, and I'm still gonna, Brandon and I are gonna have to wordsmith this one too, based on our earlier conversation. So let's see, what did we have? And then Fran went in throughout section 2 or chapter 2 and elaborated on the management activities and the actual physical descriptions of what occurred during those activities for each area.
I had a quick question on the bottom of that page about the permits that were issued in May 2016 and they expired in 2019. That's May, right? So they expired last month?
No, they typically expire at the December 31st.
Okay. And so we're applying for an extension? Is that
Yes.
how it works? on page 2.2, we talked about outer bar side cast dredging. I think at this point we would also want to add June of 19, right? To the merit was, is it out here still?
Yes.
Just, yeah.
What's that
Fill
going
out.
now?
What's that?
Okay. That's from these, yeah, these
Well,
living
by the time-
documents.
Yeah, by the time this comes out, you know,
Mm-hmm, sure.
I'm out there almost every day with my binoculars.
It's out there.
Trying to figure out exactly what the alignment is, or
Yes.
My gosh, about a week ago, they were like, he was like really, literally up on the beach. You could feel like you could just reach out and touch it.
Well, and there's been a lot of these times where it looked like it was further out than it traditionally is.
Right.
So
He was in and then out. He came in and then moved out.
and Fred, he's maintaining that alignment that we want.
He
correct?
is.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, they haven't. Yes.
Yes,
You know,
I
it's-
think
it's
they are
essentially
maintaining
to slightly favoring the Holden Beach side, and then
Oh, he's way over on the Holden Beach side. I mean, he
Yeah.
did go out a little bit, but 90% of the time he's been way over on the Holden Beach side.
Well, I
Keeping
know
it,
your sand study
keeping
says
it
that
going like this.
that's what I want. Your sand study says that it's not as much of an influence as we would think, but if you go back and you look at our erosion periods
Yeah.
versus the alignment,
Yeah.
it's like they
yeah.
line up exactly.
Psychologically,
So,
Yes, I understand, and Dr. Cleary, you know, he's all about that.
Yeah.
But and I like Dr. Cleary, but I just, you know, we've looked at it and we think it's not as big as an influence, but at the same time, yeah,
Okay.
it's minor.
that's why I'm a big fan of having it over here because
Yeah.
I think it's helpful.
Further edits?
Yeah, kind of. On page 2.4, number 6, we talked about this before, so you can remind me. 2 questions on it. Did we have that on table 2.2? And also, is this deeper, wider?
I think you asked about that in the minutes last time.
Yeah, I know, and I still can't remember.
And Fran said that it could be more about something that the Corps is doing as far as the inlet. And then David said in the minutes that with the GRR New Start that at some point that the Corps would be looking at the inlet as a sand source in the future,
Yeah.
and that's how that was answered.
And we did not include it in table 2 because it was still a little bit unknown.
Okay.
And the deeper, wider, yeah, the deeper, wider is more about the outer ebb shoal.
Right.
That almost sounds like the bend widener, where if you use the bend widener material, then the inlet, the larger bend widener you have, the longer it will take for that area to need dredging. So no, I don't think it's a deeper wider.
Okay. We added on page 2-5, about 2/3 of the way down, about the dunes. The study included 3,000 CO sprigs and investigated the effects of various fertilizer level and types and mycorrhizae. I think maybe types of.
No, but it's the mycorrhizae presence or absence /absence. So maybe it's level /types, and so maybe that
Okay.
Okay.
level /types,
Okay.
and then the mycorrhizae presence /absence.
just a quick question, backtrack a little bit on page 2-4, actually for more you guys. Did Noel finish all of the easements?
I have a report on that under status of the beach and inlets.
Okay, great.
On page 2-6, I just wanted to confirm that we're gonna cut the central reach off at 867 instead of 781, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's officially been included as part of our engineered beach now?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
From
there was-
781 to 867 as part
Yeah,
of
there was,
engineer?
some spreading, some initial construction spreading that FEMA allowed.
Okay, great.
Good.
Creeping on down.
Mhm.
That's right, just keep moving.
Mhm.
Anything further on chapter 2?
May I point something out that you talk about West End going to 867, which is the last house, but then when you talk about the Shalot Inlet, you talk about approximately 1359 as the extreme western end. So are you actually saying that the inlet is only beyond the last house? Or are you sort of defining the inlet as some of the last houses? You know, when you look at 13, this is my territory I walk.
Uh-huh.
So when you look at 1367 and then the house across the cul-de-sac behind it, you've actually made the turn when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
So are you actually saying that the Shalot Inlet is only after those houses, or are there a few houses that you classify as inlet?
Well, it kind of goes with your half mile on each end of whether they're
Yeah.
oceanfront or whether they're inlet, you know?
Yeah.
I clearly see the Miami Vice house, which is 1367.
Nice.
that's on
The one that's for sale,
And it's
yeah.
been, and the one across the cul-de-sac from it,
Around the corner.
which is behind it. And
Behind it.
Those are, to me, on the
The
inlet.
Miami Vice house.
That's what I've always called it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know how
Okay.
to, I mean, the next time you're down there, you might like to just see if you think that you would classify those more as inlet.
Okay,
Or does that have a bad connotation and shouldn't do it?
okay.
But like if you look at the east end of the island versus the west end,
Mhm.
those two houses she's referring to are literally right on the tip. You know,
Okay,
right on the
yeah.
tip, as opposed to like
Yeah, I'm-
down
right.
at Dunescape. You know, when you look at the east end, you might call Amazing Grace the east end. I call the end of Dunescape the east end, you know, because it's further east. But
Yeah.
there's a whole section out there that's not built on by design.
Yes,
Out on the tip, those houses in effect are in that area on the west end.
okay, okay.
I'm looking at the diagram that we've got here, and it looks to me like the end of the cul-de-sac is cut into the Shalot
Yeah,
Inlet.
I'm looking at the diagram as well, I see that, yeah.
I tried blowing it up, and I don't have the resolution.
And it is, you know, if it's, basically if the properties are facing out towards the ocean, then that's the ocean, but if the properties are facing towards the inlet, then they should probably be inlet,
Well,
so.
I don't know.
they face them forward. No, they
What-
face
but-
them forward toward.
But the lots more versus the, I don't know, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when you have nothing better to
Yeah.
do and you want to hop on the beach buggy and go on
Yeah,
down.
I hear you.
I'd
'Cause
Look
like-
at those.
Yeah.
Look at those last couple houses.
Okay,
And again, and if it would have some negative connotation in those properties to call them inlet, I wouldn't do it. But
Yeah, I mean, why?
But you do
I-
mention 13. You do mention in the inlet portion 1359 on down being worthy of watching.
Uh-huh.
So that's what prompted my.
okay.
What are we really saying here?
page it because I went back to the diagram.
Okay.
I think I'm down to,
Charlotte Inlet was 2-9. If that helps.
Yeah, I'm on 2.9. That's what I'm on.
Do you want to tackle the table or the remaining chapters and then come back to the table?
why don't we just do all the chapters and come back to the table? What do you think?
I thought,
That's good.
I think so too. Because we're making a lot of progress just going through the chapters. Okay. So on chapter 3, the main edits were on the evaluating progress portion. We wanted to acknowledge the core GRR, potential new regulations, and again, the triggers that were mentioned at chapter 2. So we've added those as bullet items. Are there further suggestions on that? So I'm on page 3-2, section 3.2.
I had a question on 3-1, and I think it's just a typo,
Oh.
and it's the bottom paragraph, fourth line, instead of has, should that be had occurred over this time?
This game was unoccurred. No nourishment activities had occurred.
Oh, correct. Thank you.
And on 3-2, where we're talking about the GRR report, modifications to proposed timelines based on new information related to impacts and funding such as the possible U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on the very last line of that paragraph on the new part that says revision history will be
I
tagged.
found that one.
Okay.
I saw that one this morning. I'm like, oh. Yes. Anything else for chapter 3? So, chapter 4, I went back and looked at the Brunswick County Emergency Management Plan and realized that there was not really good language for me to borrow from it. So that's why you see this section does not have a lot of elaboration, because their writing is more boots on the ground instead of a policy oriented.
Yeah.
So I was hopeful, I was optimistic that we could borrow some of their narrative. So the only edits really to chapter 4, section 4 is saying that our critical event response is in relation to emergency management.
Now, there is a new director in Brunswick County of Emergency Response. He was hired in April. He spoke last night at something I was at, that I know that they're going to be working on updating and upgrading things because they saw that what happened with Florence sort of overwhelmed and things weren't. But a lot of their stuff is going to be inland flooding, debris and things like that, but I don't know if it'd be worthwhile talking to the new director or just make a note to keep an eye on any Brunswick County
Plan.
changes
Yeah.
and upgrades and plans.
Okay, yes, I noticed that their plan was 10 years old.
It's on their it's definitely on their radar screen.
So any thoughts, suggestions on 4?
I was good with that.
Okay. And then 5, we had very few edits actually. We just had the footnote to table 5-1 and then clarification about not having a dedicated funding source at this point. And I think that was it. Yep. That was it for 5.
Okay, and we're not going to put federal funding opportunities, the GRR thing then, because it's still so vague.
Unknown.
Okay.
But we'll evaluate it next year. See where there's been progress. gets us back to
Table.
the
Which
table.
table?
Table.
2-2, right?
Yep, on
Yep.
page 2-13. So this is our path forward. So this is the list that will be reviewed and evaluated each year as part of the adaptive management of the plan. So what I want to do is, to the best of our ability, fill in the rest of the cells. I don't want to have to be determined on everything. So, CRR, do you have a good estimated beginner end date, Dan?
Yeah, the plan is not this winter, but the following year. So
2020.
2021?
yeah, I mean it would be I guess winter 2020, and then went into spring 2021.
Okay.
And I was wondering, is there an order to this table?
I had originally, this is many versions of it. I was trying if they had several focus areas. So Central Reach, I knew it was all by itself, and then the Lockwood Folly Inlet, I tried to keep the inlets together, and then
Okay.
Lockwood Folly on number 7 started to get into East End. So that was the method to my madness.
Okay.
We don't have to organize it that way. Would you like it more alphabetical order, or?
I don't know, maybe by begin date.
Okay.
What is that? Does that make sense?
I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Okay. And I'll put a note to that effect because I realize we have them, of course, identified as, project numbers 1 through 18, but that might not necessarily be the priority. We might be able to do project 16 before we get to
Right,
project
right.
5.
Right.
So I'll clarify that.
And on that first one, the CRR, that's FEMA reimbursements, right? Not grants?
Yeah, that's a good catch.
We don't really know the date on that.
Well, that's what we were just given an estimate that we're thinking it's going to be the winter of 20 and roll into 21.
Okay.
So not this winter, but
Right,
the following winter.
we know it's got to be the winter dredging window,
Okay.
and we can't, this one's too soon,
Uh-huh.
and then so it's going to be the next one.
Winter of 19 into 20 is too
No,
soon.
yeah, that'd be this winter.
Yeah, we'd have to, bid that.
Impossible.
Yeah, we'd have to bid that now.
And we don't have approved project worksheets yet.
So we want to put it in estimated
We don't have
date
that.
order?
We don't. Yeah, we don't
Estimated
have
beginning
much
date
sand.
order?
Okay, then I had a question on number 2, inlet crossing sand placement. We've got the focus area as the inlet. Is that also Eastern Reach? And is that kind of the same as number 7? Ben Widener piggyback project.
I think it's different because the inlet crossing sand, well, the sand placement is the east end, but the inlet crossing sand is typically paid for by the Corps, as far as their appropriations for the crossing.
Okay.
And then the Ben Widener is what we have to, if we want to piggyback on.
Yeah,
So
but-
money-wise, it's
Right.
So we're dividing it because of the money.
Yeah, and then we'll make sure they put them right next to each other, though. I think as well, like the
Yes, they will.
2 and
because-
7, right?
Yeah,
2 and 7
it'll
should be
with
next to each
estimated-
other.
Okay. Okay. And do we have an estimated cost for number 2? Just ballpark.
their
Yeah.
contract. Do you?
I mean, no, not like a real estimate, but based on the previous projects and things, and knowing how much saying, I mean, we could estimate or give a range.
Yeah, because it's just estimated.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
going to be locked
Right,
into
right.
anything. But at a glance, we'd be able to say, oh,
Yeah.
Central reached
Yeah.
25 million. Oh
Right.
my gosh. Okay. And so the perpetual easements, do we even put an associated cost with that? Because that was already done, and that was done by town staff. Is that correct, Christine?
No, that was done by the town's attorney.
A consulting attorney. Paid for by the town.
Correct.
Okay. So I can look that number up in the budget probably? Or-
No, probably not, because the attorney's fees are divided between departments.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
gonna have to be a pool of information, and I'll have to see if I can make that request.
Okay. It's a permit track and we already had, okay, then Widener. Got that.
Some of these, when you say estimated project cost, should you make a note that it's annually?
Well, the Central, for example, Project 1 is not an annual project.
No, some of them, I said, for some of them. For example, we've got legislative advocate, ongoing, estimated project cost 83,700. That's annually. And it's like if we do certain monitoring and things, are these happening annually or is this a one-off? So sometimes if things are ongoing and they're going to be multiple year, it should be indicated it's annually.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Tell me what.
Or for
tell me what-
coastal, or do it like you did with coastal mats, where it's annual, estimated end date annual, and it makes it clear that the estimated project cost is an annual cost. I don't want somebody to think that legislative advocacy, $83,700, gets us where we're going, because it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That one in particular stands out to me, and I just was saying, is there anything else in here that it needs to be, is the best thing to do simply say, there's an estimated project cost and it's an annual cost?
What do you think?
I'm trying to figure out how to note these things. Some are, some aren't.
Some are annual, some are not annual.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. And then the difference in the terminology, like on 16 and 17, you had ongoing. And
Right.
in my mind, I was like, because it's been going on for 10 years, 15 years. But to her point, we renew contracts every year to have the work done. So I guess we could term that as annual.
Could we just asterisk the things that are annual? Or change that column estimated maintenance? But that is, I don't know. We do have things that are.
So instead of estimated, well now,
Make it a little cooler here, Kristen. Thank you.
As long as you don't talk while I go to the,
We'll get some water.
I have been cool. I'm dying.
You're hot?
I'm hot.
Sharon, I think we'll be okay if on the two columns for estimated begin and end, if we just reflect what is annual versus what's calendar year.
Okay.
Now the hall is much colder.
Kristen,
you say in beginning and
Correct.
Number 6, permit tracking. It says focus area is Shalot Inlet. Shouldn't we be tracking all of our permits?
Well, that was particularly associated with the Ocean Isle terminate going permit, so that's
Okay.
why we had Shalot there.
Right.
Um,
Gotcha.
But we can broaden that definition and put for all focus areas, including, because it was very important, we referenced in the body of the text about the permit, that specific one.
So that's really tracking somebody else's permits. And then could we have one that's maybe tracking our own permits?
Yeah.
Oh, is it 16?
Yeah, I think that's permit.
Okay, never mind. Take that out. Take it
Well,
out.
compliant.
But then even the permit tracking, I mean, if we're going to look at, we, you know, the town I think does, you know, track the neighboring islands. So maybe we can even, because I'm sure we're going to track Oak Island activities as well.
Right.
So it would just be, and because we even, you know, they did the Eastern Channel project and things like that. So it would just be both the tracking of just adjacent municipalities, and even the county, right? So
Think they're gonna do evil letter again?
who knows?
So then, Fran, for the focus area, it would be relevant to all areas then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the town does that now. So
Okay, so for permit tracking, we'll change the focus area to all, and the description will be tracking of adjacent municipalities and county permits for potential effects to the town.
Okay.
Talked about Ben Widener. Erosion control. Is that something that we want to think through within the next 5 years, next 10 years for erosion control projects?
I'd like to do it sooner than later, but what are you guys' thoughts?
What, is she talking about number 2?
Number 8.
Number 8. Tim, just for your benefit, if it's an engineered beach, then we're eligible for the FEMA reimbursements if they're damaged. So Central Beach we get reimbursed, but the areas that are not engineered.
But
I have
the
a-
problem is that the Corps and FEMA are, you know, don't play together,
Right.
and the Corps still puts sand on the east end as they are, you know, planning to this winter, and
If we make the East End an engineered beach, the
then
Corps
the
will
Corps,
stop.
yes, the Corps would, but the Corps would, yeah. So
Okay, we need to talk about that then.
Yeah.
yeah.
But if it became engineered and it was FEMA eligible, that would be different.
But as long if the Corps start putting sand on the beach, FEMA's going to be like, we don't touch that beach.
So you're
Right.
saying it's an either or.
Don't
But I have
double
a,
dip.
I have
Yeah.
a scenario.
Okay.
It gets managed, but you don't double dip.
Right, I have a scenario.
Yeah.
So here's how I would see
Yep.
it possibly occurring in the next 5 years.
Okay.
If North Carolina released more supplemental funds like they did this year, and we constructed a project with funding after a hurricane with state funds for the eastern reach and made it to a design template.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have an argument there, and we could, you know, take it to FEMA, because it's not, you know, it's not, you know, one of those 50-year, one of those core 50-year projects, and I think that is basically the one where the FEMA doesn't want to get involved in those at all. So yeah, okay, we can.
I'll defer to you, but
No, we can try that. Because it is, I mean, the town has put a lot of money into the East End. But FEMA has, that beach is completely engineered. But it's just who is engineering it? Is it the town, the state, or is it the Corps? And right now FEMA's holding that is engineered by the Corps, and so we're not touching it. But at the same time, if the beach gets nailed after a major storm, the Corps not coming in and doing that. The Corps only does that. So I understand. I see what you're going for, and I think we could probably argue that.
So how
Do we
about
think making it an engineered beach is preferable?
With the funding from the state and not from federal.
And for post hurricane, mitigation or recovery.
Yeah.
Because the Corps is not, even though that's Corps Beach, they're not going to do that unless the intercoastal waterway gets completely clogged up. So.
Yeah.
So how about for that I put to be determined for begin and end, but parens, ideally, years 1 through 5, so that it's acknowledged that we want it to happen in the short term. And then project costs to be determined, potential funding sources, the supplemental state funding and the town's cost share. Okay. Number 9, additional dune monitoring. I have a begin date, but I don't have an end date.
Can we go back and put possible supplemental state funding?
Possible, yes. So the
Can we just, this project here for the additional dune monitoring, can you give a recap of that real quick?
that project was actually proposed by Dean. I'm going back through my notes. In the fiscal year 1920, where did I get that begin date? Was that part of the UNC? No. Where would I have pulled that from? Is there money in the forthcoming budget for this, Christy?
No,
No.
it's just something he brought up. He brought up
Okay.
that and the dune breach.
As I recall, Fran's last monitoring report actually highlighted that there's some goofy stuff going on in some of West End,
Yeah,
and that there should be potentially more monitoring, and then there was also the Maritime Forest. And yeah, I remember Dean also mentioning it. And then there was also the question of whether or not, given that the Ocean Isle groin has the language in it about if there is any negative impact on Holden Beach, it would be their responsibility basically to remediate, to make it good, and making it good may get to the point as much as their groin goes away. I mean, that's the language. So the question was whether or not there needed to be more frequent monitoring.
But I think that was the
To a
survey
stamp.
transects,
Yes.
which we did put in
we
there,
did
right?
put in the budget, correct. So maybe,
Not necessarily dune,
Dune.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we did add the extra survey transects down there to keep an eye on it, right?
Right, and then don't we have an item in there about the kind of the
but as a reminder,
Well, we have the
I've
Maritime
said this
Forest
several
item.
times in this
So it's
meeting,
kind of-
but the budget was just approved and the surveys were done in April, so those additional won't
Absolutely.
come until next April, and Fran's report in October will not reference those, because, sorry, just,
Sure.
This October, but they won't show up in his report until the following October.
Right.
Following October because
Yep.
of the budget.
Right.
Yep. And then even then, we don't have anything we do have some stuff to compare it to. It's better to have like 2 years.
It'll be your baseline.
Yes, yes.
So, is that what he meant? Is that what Dean meant? Was dune monitoring?
That description is what I have from him. So what I can do is similarly to what we did for erosion control. I can put for begin and end, to be determined, but years, short term versus rather than long term. And I'm assuming that the potential funding source for that would be the town.
So, and I didn't really hear, so, Christy, was the town, the conversion of 50 acres with NC State to a maritime forest? Was that the item 10?
In,
'Cause I knew all the UNCW stuff, but I didn't really know.
In your annual monitoring report, you mentioned
Okay.
about a maritime forest down
Yeah.
there, and there's some NC State property, so it's been
Okay.
discussed
Okay.
in that area.
Yeah,
But
this one came
that-
from you.
Yeah.
It's in your annual monitoring report.
I said 50 acres?
No, you said,
It's a West
no,
End.
you said maritime forest. The
Okay.
50 acres is what NC State owns at the end.
Okay, okay.
A lot.
Because I know that 50 acres, yeah. I did,
Where is
I
it?
definitely did talk about maritime forest.
He knows he
But
does
I
not
did-
remember.
I did not say 50 acres.
No, no, no,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was.
So
Okay.
if you don't like that amount, based on your recommendation, this is where we need
No,
to take
see,
it.
well, 50 acres might be appropriate.
50, that marsh back on the back side of the west end is 50 acres?
Well, it's just, with the dune system out there is, 600 feet wide and up to 600 feet wide. It's, maybe 400 to 600 feet. So if we did, I would have to do some math
Okay.
there.
That
There's
just sounds like a lot.
I'm talking about feet, and then but then an acre really isn't a lot of land, really.
Yeah.
But 50 acres sounds like a lot.
It does.
So
Uh,
does the board want to mark through 50 and put acreage, or
Yeah, let's do
Property?
that. So let's just put acreage to
so
be.
there's not a
And I'll
amount?
say
Yeah,
acreage
'cause 50 acres
owned
sounds
by,
a lot,
yeah, I'll
but
say
there could be
acreage
easily 50
Might
acres.
be.
But yeah,
So I'll just say acreage owned by NC State.
yeah, there you go.
To be determined.
Okay, am I now freezing everyone else out? Yeah, I know. I'm comfortable and everybody else is freezing.
So potential funding sources for that one would be,
But it could just be an easement. It could be in kind.
well, to convert it, we're gonna have to do something, right?
I would just, it would just be, I think, planting the more like the species that you want to try to kind of jumpstart that natural succession from
Yeah.
dunes to maritime forest.
You would probably just fill in town there, and if the town was
And then,
able to do that somehow in kind, then that,
Yeah. You're
Would work.
thinking finance. I was thinking the legal mechanism and the negotiations of.
and then even like some additional fertilizer and that sort of thing.
Okay, so that town for that. Okay.
I mean, 50 acres bring money, that's a lot. Especially for the species you're talking about. That would be, I'm thinking probably your hollies and live oaks and,
Yeah. But I mean, if the oaks are only this big versus, I think they would be on the smaller side.
Mhm.
So,
Is that a project that NC State would be interested in studying? the
Yeah.
conversion, and would they finance that because
definitely.
of the study?
Yeah, and I'm sure there are lots of grants out there that would love to kind of have some money at that. Yeah, that could be completely grant funded, I'm sure.
Okay, so the next one that I need help on is 14, which is the Dune Breach study, which was Dean's. Do we want to put that one is to be determined, and do we want that one short term or long term?
Oh, we want everything short term.
I know.
well, I'm all about that one, just because I think it's a critical,
Uh-huh.
And when would that be town, or do you think that since it's a study, it could be eligible for grant funding or state funds? I know it's
What, I defer to you guys. What do you think?
I would assume that would be more town versus grants.
because it's a study and it's not hardcore turning dirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then we have the coastal map. So for 16 and 17, I've changed from ongoing to annual as a description for the beginning
Okay.
and date. And what would we like as the estimated cost for the permit compliance monitoring? Are we thinking that ATM is paid?
It's variable. It's project related. It's gonna. It's immediately after the project, the monitoring costs are relatively high, and then 3 or 4 years later, there's relatively minimal.
Right.
Wouldn't those costs kind of be incorporated into the cost of those projects?
Yeah, I would say the immediate post-project monitoring is usually, but then sometimes there's a 6 month,
Yeah.
and then there's almost always a 12 month, and then that's kind of based on because we had to do, and then there's other things like compaction, beach compaction, where it's listed in our compliance monitoring. They want us to test it, but a lot of times they say don't worry about it. The turtle people come down and say this material's fine, so don't till, don't compact, and don't do any compaction testing. We're like, okay. So, and then other times they'll say you have to submit us 50 samples of sand,
So
and we
you're
say,
saying that
well,
it's
the
hard
sand
to
is really,
quantify.
sand is really, compliant. We only want to send you 25, and they're like, okay.
Can we put just a ballpark range? If we look at
Yeah, I guess.
I just don't want to leave it empty.
Yeah. Can we just write variable?
I do. I like.
Just variable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That gets us off the hook then. Okay. All right. And then for 18, critical event response as needed, cost to be determined, and I entered that the town would be the funding source. And I put the town as the funding source also for 16 for the permit compliance monitoring. So, I'm good. We've made progress. We've got a complete table.
I have a question
Sure.
about, in here, I think I couldn't pull it out right now, but the Argos real-time camera monitoring, wasn't that mentioned in this plan? And does that need to be a project? It's not in the budget for the coming year, correct, Christy?
It's not in the budget.
But I think, didn't we have this in here?
We mentioned it. And I'm wondering if that was one that we said we would evaluate next year. So,
I think
Maybe.
it is. I think that's what it was said.
so that's why we don't have it in the table, because the table just is what was approved for this year
Okay.
to move forward with.
All right.
I'm done if you're done.
You guys, how do you feel?
I feel good.
Okay.
I feel like we got a lot of stuff in here. I mean, I think we covered a lot. Thank you both.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have this technical guru wisdom.
our agenda then? Now we're going to do status of the beach and inlet. We kind of rearranged our agenda this time so that we'd wrap up the report and they could leave if they needed to before we got into the beach status.
Okay.
Right.
The Board of Commissioners made a budget amendment at the June board meeting to participate in the beneficial use placement of sand from the Ben Widener in the upcoming AIWW Inlet Crossing contract. The total estimated cost from the Corps for the Ben Widener was $1,165,000, with 2/3 of that, which was $776,705, coming from the North Carolina Shallow Draft Inlet and Aquatic Weed Fund, and 1/3 coming from the town, which was $388,295. The town has requested reimbursement for half of that local match from the county. Attorney Fox provided the town with the certification paperwork yesterday that all easements are in place for the upcoming project, and the Corps has that information. The town completed its planning on the beachfront of vegetation and sand fence that needed to be replaced. It spans from Captain Jack's to approximately 777 OBW. Gaps were filled in between existing vegetation and planted vegetation in this area.
Are they through?
They're going to put in some extra that they are giving us today, but other than that, they're done.
Okay, because
Captain Jack's is no longer there, right?
No, it's just what?
That's everyone still knows that where Captain Jack's is, though, or was.
they left their pipe and their digger stick.
Digger stick.
Yeah. It's a fire hose. They
Yeah.
fill it with water.
Yeah.
There's a GRR special meeting with a presentation from the Corps to the BOC on Monday, July 8th at 2 p.m.
Here.
Here. I checked in with the project manager for the FEMA Florence Michael projects. It's still in environmental review. We did not get any updated information on a timing for release of funds for Matthew. But at the managers meeting at Bald Head on Friday, the 14th, it seems that others are in the same boat as we are, waiting for their final reimbursements on Matthew. The UNCW Marine Quest program is doing a beach sweep here on July 1st. The goal is to educate youth about the impacts of marine debris and encourage behavior that will reduce debris in the future. And I'm going to turn it over to Fran to speak about updates on the sand search.
Yep. We are coordinating with the seismic guy right now to try to get him out there as soon as possible to do the first step in the data collection. And we're hoping that, the next, this week, next week is an issue, but, within the following couple of weeks, we're going to have someone out there and collecting the seismic data. We're looking at a couple different areas. The BOEM stuff, according to the 2016 summary report from BOEM for the South Carolina, they always just say Southern North Carolina, but it's basically the Long Bay area, like Ocean Isle, Oak Isle, and Holden Beach, and it's 3 miles offshore. They're, looking at some of the older stuff. The Corps did projects out there beyond there, basically from about 1 mile to 5 miles out.
Yeah.
There is some data out there, but then they apparently took more data in 2016, and that's not on that new fancy BOEM website. So I keep emailing some of the BOEM people, and there haven't been. I've contacted several people. I think I'm waiting on more data, but we're going to keep going, and hopefully when that data comes, it'll just kind of reinforce what we're already doing. But in terms of looking at different areas, we're going to look at a few areas that are inside that, closer to shore, outside of BOEM, because I'm just a little bit worried about how if we get into BOEM,
Yeah.
there's some benefits to that, but the one kind of detractor is that it'll almost be like a new permitting process, which could really slow things down. But on the other hand, for hopper dredging, we have to operate under the South Atlantic Regional Biological Opinion, the SARBO. And the Corps has, so many turtle takes they can take every single year. And when we're working inside the state waters, 3 miles, we have to work under that, and the Corps gets a little upset. They're like, well, if you take a turtle, that means you're taking one from us.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the 2017, they hit a bunch in Savannah River, and so then, and we actually did take 2 turtles in ours, and they were juveniles, and it does seem like there's, a bumper crop of turtles out there in the last few years. But they were, a little bit, and we kept going with the project. But if you go to BOEM, in the BOEM territory, you can have your own separate turtle takes. And they did that with a couple other projects here. I think it was the Carteret County project where they were allowed 4 turtle takes for their project separately. So, there's and we're pretty sure there's some sand out there too. And none of it, basically the sand offshore, we don't have any slam dunk areas where we can just say, here's all our sand, we're good. We have to go around and look carefully and try to avoid any kind of exposed hard bottom, that sort of thing. And usually there's 2 to 4 feet of kind of reworked sand that we're going for. And so it's usually a big area that we have to look at. And it's a lot, we modeled the nourishment over the North Myrtle Beach, and North Myrtle Beach has been doing it successfully for the last 20 years. So, that's where we are, and we're just trying to work on it, and we're trying to finalize it, and we're, just making sure that we know what everyone else is doing, and all that data out there. And so we should have, out there collecting data, this month.
Okay. So you're thinking we're all on schedule?
Yeah, we are. And then, we can even we'll start talking with there are a couple different data collections, and we'll work in. It looks good, and that data that hopefully we get here in the next couple of weeks, it should even help, expedite that kind of process. So.
Okay. But really, we're kind of on hold until we get those worksheets, right?
Yeah, we can't do anything until, we can do this process in parallel, but until we have approved project worksheets, don't have a project.
Yeah.
I talked with the FEMA guy, Bob Gleason, and he said he was heading down to the Mexico Beach area and to do some of the Hurricane Michael stuff. And but it's a shame. Because that only happened a month after, and so they're way behind. If he's heading down there now. Yeah.
10 months later?
Yeah. So I'm sure maybe he's just helping out, and they're just, but I don't know.
That's what I had.
Okay. Let me see what questions I have. On the GRR, I just want to confirm in my notes that it's 2/3, 1/3 match, correct? If that were to go forward?
That Corps is going to be presenting information on the 8th, and it will probably be beneficial for this board to attend if you can.
Okay.
That's the information that was the information that was presented at the last meeting for the GRR by Pointer Sproul was a half-half. It was 3 years. It's 3 by 3 by
Right.
3.
Yeah,
And
that-
that's what, up to $3 million. So that would be up to $1.5 million each.
So that gives us the report, and then they will come back with the report and have suggested projects, right? But if we went forward with a project, then
That was authorized, yes.
if it would end up being an authorized project, then it would be 2/3, 1/3.
That is normally how the
They're typically 65-35.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm not sure if they would try to change that in the future year.
Okay. But the drawback to that is it makes us ineligible for FEMA reimbursement then. We become a poor beach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you know, is that just the sand portion? Because doesn't FEMA give us other reimbursements for utility damage, overtime, that kind of thing?
That's based on sand.
All this is sand, so
Yeah, category G. engineered beach.
And recreational facilities.
Okay. Yeah, well, so there are other items on there.
But so then, when they say hands off, this is a core beach, they still do your damages?
They should reimburse non-beach related damages.
Mm-hmm. Saying that, do just some reservations with, the last time the GRR was funded, it was just way too large, way too expensive, and that project had no chance of getting funded. But I did hear, I was just talking that Surf City, and then they're going to, they had a project that was like over-designed and way too big, and it was like $130 million to build it. But there is talk now that since the Corps does have money specifically for post-Florence things, that they might get that on there. So that could be a good indication if that happens, that some of these projects that just seem unrealistically large, that the Corps is designing, the one that NAG said that they did too, that possibly it could happen here in the future, that the Corps, could make some of these projects work. I mean, it's difficult though, because it seems like the Corps complains about having money for especially for beach nourishments every year. I think it seems like they get less and less. And now some of these 50-year projects are running out, like the Riceville Beach and Carolina Beach projects. It's just something to follow here, and I just don't want the town. The Ocean Isles 50-year project is a good project where it's manageable. It's $15 to $20 million or something like that. It's not some $130 million, $150 million project, which the last project was something like that. So it's just the town has very little control in it as soon as you get into that. But there could be. It's going to be a tough decision, I think.
Okay. Do you happen to know if there's a charge for the merit doing this? They're not going to charge us this time, right?
There should be taken care of out of federal funds that are in the pot. We have not been told about any fees.
Okay. Now, I think I saw them doing the last fertilization from the Renourishment Association, maybe? Do you know anything about that?
It's my understanding all that's, well, I know all the planting was done. I don't know if he's finishing the fertilization. Somebody from the Beach Renourishment Association might want to contact Steve just to verify that.
Okay. I saw him out fertilizing about a week and a half ago, maybe?
I'm sure that it probably was, but you may want to follow up. I think you were on the board, right?
That's the only questions I had. Does anybody else have questions? Any questions?
Turns overwhelmed.
Okay, let me run through my announcements real quick. July 8th is the GRR meeting with the Corps, which Christy just mentioned. Mike covered the Brunswick County Beaches meeting for me in June while I was having wedding fun. The next meeting is August the 7th. Christy, he said that they the town agreed to submit our dredging plan for the next 5 years.
That's been done.
Pardon?
That's been done.
Okay, that was my question.
That's what?
It's been done.
Okay.
American Shore and Beach Preservation Association NAPA meeting is October 22nd through the 25th in Myrtle Beach. The NC Byways meeting is November 12th and 13th at the Holiday Inn in Wrightsville Beach. Then we need to work on a short consensus to the board. It's always my favorite part of the meeting. You guys got the summary from Mike, right?
Yeah.
In your packet. Okay, here's what I have. Tim here's how this works. As part of our, when we were set up, we do a summary of our meeting, and we have to all be here to vote on it, and then we send that to the BOC. So I come with a draft of what I think we're gonna say, and then we edit that, okay?
Just so we can be timely and anticipate what everyone's gonna say.
Feels weird right now. The Inlet and Beach Protection Board, IBPB, met June 27th, and the following issues and topics were addressed. Comprehensive long-term plan. Work on the long-term plan continues and was the major thrust of the meeting. Kathy Forster, AICP, senior planner and facilitator with ATM, is facilitating the effort. A draft of the plan was reviewed with an emphasis on the project table. The final draft will be reviewed at our July meeting. Is that right?
It's going final. We're done with draft.
Okay.
You're getting the final. The final will be ready for your approval at the July meeting.
Okay. So I'm going to say the final report will be reviewed at our July meeting with subsequent submission to the BOC for approval and adoption. That sound right?
Okay, then I'm just going to ask a question. Do you finalize something before it goes to the Board of Commissioners, or is it better to send the Board of Commissioners a final draft before it's closed out?
I think what we're talking about is that she'll make these changes. We're going to look at it next month, make sure we're really pleased with it, and then we're going to send it on to you guys.
We're finalizing our
Okay.
review of it.
I have a definition of final.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we're
Got it.
finalizing our review and then presenting it to you.
And
Okay.
then you guys do your thing with it. New paragraph. The quarterly beach email blast was sent. Did you guys get that?
Yep,
Beach and Inlet newsletter.
got it.
Status of the beach and inlet. Staff provided an overview of conditions and issues relative to the beach strand and inlets. The status of the Florence and Michael remediation project, now known as Central Reach Reimbursement Project, CRR project,
CRR.
including sand sourcing, was discussed.
Mhm.
Because you knew I was going to ask, right? Work is essentially complete on obtaining, I should say, work is complete on obtaining easements from East End property owners.
We have a certificate.
From East End property owners to allow sand placement in the future from dredging the Lockwood Folly Inlet and crossing. The Corps has confirmed that a project will happen this winter to place approximately 135,000 cubic yards of material from the bin widener on the east end, and the bid packages are expected to be out soon. Right?
Yes.
And my hope is that whoever's at the meeting right now is hearing that this is coming out, right?
Yeah, they should be out here usually like within the week or so.
Yeah, into June, right?
Yeah. Yeah, early July, but yeah.
Does anybody happen to know, is that 135 from the bin widener, but is that also the crossing? Or is it 135 on top of the crossing?
135 is what he referenced for the bin widener.
So it actually could be more than, correct?
Correct. Not correct?
No, I'm not sure.
That's what he referenced for the bin widener.
Okay.
Because there should be a lot, because they haven't done the Ben Widener several years, so 135 sounds okay. And then I would think that they wouldn't get a whole, since they just did the intercoastal waterway,
Yeah.
then there might only be like 50 in there. So it might be about 180. And that's kind of what we did in 2014, was about 180.
Yep.
Good.
So,
Okay, so how about if I just leave this report at 135 and we'll have a better idea later? Just because since 135 was their number.
Yeah.
Meetings. The next IBP meeting is July 25th. The IBPB was represented at the Brunswick County Shoreline Protection meeting June 5th. Members will be attending the meeting July 8th with the Corps of Engineers to hear about the possibility of a GRR project.
And that's on the 8th at 2 o'clock?
I believe it's 2 o'clock. IBPB vacancy. Tim Gibble was selected at the June BOC meeting to fill the board vacancy and was welcomed to the group.
Lucky man.
Okay, what other changes should we add, delete, change? Any suggestions, corrections?
Looks good.
You good with that?
Good summary.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. Public comments.
I've been talking all along.
You can say, Pat's been discussing all along.
As a citizen, not as a commissioner,
Your comments all along were as a citizen.
as a citizen, reading a report, having, not as a commissioner, there's no opinion in here, just suggestions.
Okay. That being the case, we should adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous too. And